Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. Today, we're taking those rough sketches from our previous lesson on integration patterns and, well, we're turning them into a finalized, ironclad patent application for our Capstone project. We're officially moving from high-level choices to drafting a concrete, working architectural blueprint. And you know, in Web3, a bad blueprint doesn't just mean you end up with a glitchy app. It literally means drained funds, so we've got to get this right. So the big question is, how exactly do you build a bridge between the chaotic real world and the deterministic blockchain without the whole thing just collapsing under pressure? To keep our machine from short-circuiting, we need an architecture that perfectly balances what we call the iron triangle: latency, safety, and cost. Now, in traditional engineering, you usually only get to pick two, right? But let's dive into this explainer and figure out how to construct a bridge that handles off-chain data securely without absolutely breaking our on-chain logic. Here's a quick look at the schematic index for today's blueprint. We'll be covering the master blueprint, data flow and integration, event-driven versus poll-based models, on-chain account responsibilities, error handling, and finally, observability.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Data Flow and Integration. Think of this as our assembly line.
So let's look at how data actually moves into our system. It acts a lot like an assembly line feeding crucial raw parts into a massive machine. First up, the data originates at the external source adapter. We're relying on heavy hitters here, like Pyth or Switchboard, to grab those real-world prices. From there, it flows through the ingestion layer, which could be a Helius webhook reacting instantly, or maybe a scheduled poller. Next, the data gets officially signed and rate-limited by the relayer, just to make sure it's not spamming the network. And finally, the whole package lands securely at our on-chain program. It's a brilliant way to visualize the exact journey your Oracle data takes. But what's really fascinating here is the immense responsibility we're placing on step 2. Crucially, that ingestion layer is your bouncer. It has to ruthlessly verify cryptographic signatures to prove where the data came from, and it has to check its age before letting any payload anywhere near the blockchain. Think about it. You wouldn't let just anyone wander in and alter your smart contract state, right? So this layer filters out the bad actors and stale data right at the door. Moving right along to our next section, event-driven versus poll-based. It's time to choose our engine type. Okay, so what kind of engine is actually driving this assembly line? Are we talking about an eager push model or a scheduled pull model? Well, an event-driven architecture is kind of like an eager puppy pushing the newspaper into your hands the exact second it hits the driveway. You get instant updates, sub-5-second latency, it's super fast. A pull-based architecture, on the other hand, is a bit more like asking a lazy cat on a very strict schedule if the mail is here yet. It gets the job done for sure, but definitely with higher latency. So the real trick is understanding how these two engines change the fundamental dynamics of your system. And this decision matrix right here reveals our iron triangle trade-offs. Look, event-driven is lightning fast, absolutely. But on networks like Solana, your costs are going to scale with every single update submitted to the chain because you're paying for all that compute. Polling, conversely, is highly auditable since you're querying at a specific historical moment, but it concentrates your costs based purely on how frequently you decide to run that query. Ultimately, you've got to match this choice to your application's exact needs. Next up is Section 3, On-Chain Account Responsibilities, or as I like to call them, the internal gears. As we structure this system, and honestly, this is something Forge College programs heavily emphasize when teaching robust Web3 development, we need to precisely define the internal gears of our Solana program. You can think of these 3 accounts as distinct compartments within a bank vault, splitting up the responsibilities to keep everything clean and secure. First, you have a price state account for the actual raw data. Second, a config account that holds all our rules, thresholds, and allowed oracles. And third, a permission account that acts as the lock, ensuring only authorized relayers actually hold the key. I really cannot stress this point enough. Please remember the golden rule of this blueprint. Keep your on-chain price state extremely compact. We're talking just the bare essentials here, the raw numbers like the mantissa and exponent, and the specific time slot it occurred in. Why? To save on those pesky Solana rent costs. You want to maintain all the heavy lifting, the batching, the complex math. Keep all of that off-chain in your relayer and ingestion layers. Let the off-chain servers do the sweating for you. All right, moving to Section 4, error handling and fallbacks. It's time to install the safety valves. Because let's face it, even the absolute best machines jam up occasionally. So we need deterministic safety valves to handle things like stale prices, invalid signatures, or just massive price deviations. For instance, our webhook handler implements a very strict 60-second freshness check. If an incoming update is older than 60 seconds, it's immediately rejected, because in the ultra-fast-paced world of crypto, a minute is a literal lifetime. This simple check ensures we never accidentally process ancient, replayed prices that could trigger terrible arbitrage opportunities or even false liquidations.
But you might be wondering, what happens when an update is just completely malformed or it permanently fails its cryptographic verification? Well, if an update gets permanently rejected with a 4x error, meaning the data sent was fundamentally bad or completely unreadable, it goes straight to what we call the dead letter queue. You can picture this as an island of misfit data. It sits safely off-chain where human inspection can come in, figure out what went wrong, and fix it, all without clogging up the rest of your active assembly line. Let's put this all together and see how it builds into a highly resilient system. Say our primary Pyth feed fails the on-chain deviation check, or maybe the data is just completely missing. The system doesn't panic. It doesn't shut down. Instead, it gracefully triggers a scheduled puller to pull from our switchboard fallback. And if switchboard returns a valid price, boom, the puller submits the fallback update to keep the machine happily humming along. Now that is true engineering redundancy in action.
And finally, Section 5, Observability and Next Steps. Let's look at our dials and gauges.
A machine is completely useless if you can't read its dials when things start spinning out of control. We absolutely must establish clear observability touchpoints. You've got to instrument metrics like your per-feed update rates, the average age at write, verification failures per hour, and your on-chain revert counts. Funnel all of this data into an industry-standard monitoring tool like Prometheus. That way, you can trigger automated alerts the exact millisecond a feed breaks, rather than finding out on Twitter 2 hours later. Now, all these architectural decisions we've covered today, they aren't just pretty cosmetic sketches. They directly determine the instruction signatures, the error codes, and the account schemas you'll be building in the next lesson. You are literally defining the shape of the data that your smart contracts will securely consume. So now that your Capstone schematic is fully mapped out, the only question left is, are you ready to build? We highly invite you to join the lab and visit forge.college to dive deeper into this subject and explore a ton of other incredible Web3 topics. Because remember, an architecture is only a drawing until you write the code to breathe life into it. But when billions of dollars of value are on the line, the question isn't just what will you build, but rather, is your blueprint strong enough to actually survive the real world?